It's got time for questions.
One more presenter. Our final presenter is Ali, who's going to tell us about his internship.
Hello everyone, I hope you guys are all doing well. So I'm actually really excited to basically tell you guys what I've been doing since January. So I was actually given the opportunity of interning at the Reynolds-Finley Historical Library here at Lister at UAB. And it was an absolutely amazing internship because I learned all sorts of these skills, mostly dealing with Arabic and Middle Eastern manuscripts, language such as Arabic, Syriac, Persian. And I'm going to tell you guys some of the stuff, that my achievements. I was able to successfully date manuscripts between the 18th and 19th centuries, some 17th, some early 20th. I collected metadata for these Arabic manuscripts. So some metadata is basically just information from the manuscripts, such as titles, such as who the author was, that goes into these databases that everyone can access through their university libraries. I analyzed Arabic manuscripts from many different topics: medical, historical, religious. And I partially analyzed a 15th century Syriac prayer book, which I'll get to in the coming slides. And actually, I'm gonna tell you guys some of the methods I used for dating. So not all the books actually had dates on them, so I had to actually use it's just old-fashioned paleography to figure out maybe what time period it belonged to. So the way I did that was, one of the methods was comparison in the existing collection. So basically what I did, there's a big table at the Reynolds-Finley Historical Library, laid out all these manuscripts. Some from the 18th century, 1850, 1900, 1750. I just laid them all out chronologically. Got one manuscript that I didn't know what time period it was from, and I just kind of compared, used a magnifying glass and compared the style of the calligraphy, the style of just how it was written and everything. And I was able to do that fairly successful. And I also did the same thing, not with just the Lister collection, but also with the Digital Library of the Middle East at Stanford Library. So they had basically the images, I did the same thing. And so let me show you guys some of the manuscripts that I was able to look at. So this is Kitab Mujiz al-Qanun. Everyone's heard of Avicenna, Ibn Sina. One of his most famous works was the Canon of Medicine. So Ibn Nafis, about 100 years after, 100 or 200 years after Avicenna, wrote an abridgment of Avicenna's Canon of Medicine. And this was called Kitab Mujiz al-Qanun. And this one book that was at Lister was dated back to the early to mid 19th century. I actually dated this one using the methods I explained prior. And we actually, me and Anna, the metadata librarian, we were able to go and see other libraries who had the same exact book. And one of them was actually dated to 1830. So I was happy to see that. The date's kind of similar because I was able to say it was early to mid 19th century. And the interesting thing about this manuscript is if you were to go back 200 years ago, this is what your medical school student would be basically carrying around. So here we are. This is actually all Arabic, the text, and right here you have all the marginalia on these notes. There's something really interesting about these notes. So I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. Most of you probably, I don't know if anyone here can read Arabic, like the Arabic script, but this is not Arabic, this is actually Persian. So this was actually not in Arabia. This was probably in a country or a region where Persian was the language of higher education, which was usually in Persia as well as India. So I think this manuscript probably circulated around the Safavid, maybe late Mughal Empire, British or early British India, around that time period. Another manuscript we have, another medical manuscript. This is The Road to Health of Hippocrates. Hippocrates in Arabic is Ibn Qarat. There's no P in Arabic, so they use the B sound. Copyist, writer, we don't know. Dates to 1885. This book actually had a date. And right here you see, these are basically just different kind of recipes, or not recipes, you can say prescriptions. You have like different ointments, different creams, remedies basically. And all the way at the end, you actually have a physician wrote some pharmaceutical notes, or prescriptions basically. So I thought that was interesting. It's preserved 150 years later. And then we have some historical manuscripts as well. So we did the main medical, now we'll go to the historical. So this is actually the biography of the Prophet Muhammad. This is a famous work that was actually a known book. I was able to find multiple records of it in other libraries. The guy as well was famous, Al-Hadid al-Shafi. This actually dated back to 1707, which is one of the the oldest manuscripts in the collection. And right here you got your marginalia. The person who was reading it took notes as well. And this is, in my opinion, the most beautiful manuscript in the entire collection. This is the first page of the Quran, which is called Al-Fatiha, the opening. This is basically, I call it a crash course into Islam. Everything you need to know about Islam is usually the first page. So I actually had to date this also as well, for 18th to early 19th century. I was able to look at other manuscripts from this time period. A lot of Ottoman manuscripts use this design. So the flower patterns are actually not originally Ottoman Turkish, it's actually a Persian design. Whenever you see flowers in Islamic art, it usually came from Persian influence. And the Ottoman Empire was heavily influenced by the Persians, so it makes sense that they have some Persian art in their manuscripts. So we have Ottoman style illuminations as well as these golden flakes. And now this is actually probably my favorite in the entire collection. Not Arabic, but Syriac. So as most of you probably already know, Syriac is a dialect of Aramaic that was spoken, it's actually what you would say, the main language of Syriac Christianity. And it came out of Edessa, which was in northern Syria in the 1st, 2nd centuries AD, as a dialect of Aramaic. And it is heavily associated with Syriac Christianity. So right here we have actually a Syriac prayer book. When they said, yeah, we have a Syriac book, I said, oh, it's probably religious, because most Syriac manuscripts are religious. Writer and the copyist, we don't know. 1589, this is the earliest manuscript in the collection. And also it's 1 and 2 volumes, so this is just volume 1. And this is the inside. So I was actually able to, this is the first page, and this is actually a magnification right here of the title. And I was actually the first person in probably the past 100 years to be able to read this title. And it translated to the resurrection of the woundmark of the resurrection of Sunday, which I believe it may have been a prayer recited during Easter, during maybe Lent. I'm not sure exactly. I wasn't able to read the rest of it. It's just because my knowledge just wasn't that good in Syriac. But this actually kind of leads me up to the main point of this presentation. I was discussing the evolution of Arabic and the early origins of Arabic. And while I was studying Syriac, because I basically learned the Syriac alphabet to be able to read this, I was able to see that Syriac actually has a lot of similarities with Arabic. And so like any good anthropology student, I just started digging and I just tried to learn, like, what are the origins of Arabic? Did it come from Syriac? And later I learned that Arabic did not come from Syriac, it came from Nabatean Aramaic. Now the Nabateans, all of you have seen Indiana Jones and which one is it? The Last Crusade. Yeah, we're anthropology students here, or anthropologists. You guys remember that scene where the Holy Grail was in that kind of desert structure, that building? That was actually Petra, the capital of the Nabateans. So Nabatean Aramaic was spoken in northern Arabia and the south Levant. It was also a dialect of Aramaic. And the Nabateans were interesting because they had their own script that was a cursive form of Aramaic. And from that, Arabic actually evolved. But then I just started noticing that Syriac has too many similarities with Arabic to be to not be associated with it. So I started digging and doing research, and I learned also 100 years ago that basically linguistics and these studies, or linguistics and Semitic linguistics, they were divided up into 2 camps. One camp thought that Arabic descended from Nabatean Aramaic. Another camp thought it descended from Syriac. Now it's mostly, everyone agrees that it descended from Nabatean Aramaic, but like any good anthropology student, I wanted to figure it out on my own. So I chose 6 different inscriptions from the 3rd century to the 6th century, and I just mapped out all the letters just to see that evolution. And I can say with certainty that they are right. It did come from Nabatean Aramaic, but I found something pretty interesting. We have 2 inscriptions that I'm actually about to zoom in on. The inscription of Namada in 328 AD and Jabal Ram, which is less than 20 years later. So Namada inscription is interesting because this is the Nabatean Aramaic inscription at its most latest stage. And some would even say in its transition to Arabic. And then Jabal Ram is the earliest Arabic inscription ever that's been found so far. But I noticed that during this transition, Arabic started picking up, started having some Syriac characteristics, which may have, you could say, catalyzed this transition to Arabic. And I just want to show you guys what I noticed. So for example, this is Alif, the A sound in Arabic. It's just a vertical line. This is Alif in Syriac, a vertical line. And this is Alif in Nabatean. Doesn't look the same. This is more like the Hebrew square script, Alif in Hebrew or Aramaic. Same with shin, sin, which is the S sound in Arabic. It is written on a horizontal, basically you could say axis. Syriac also written horizontally, and Nabatean vertical. So I saw from many other letters, which I'm not going to dig into because it gets more complicated, that it shifted to a more horizontal axis when writing. And the same thing with ligatures. So ligatures are basically letters that are, it's mostly like a combination of two letters. Syriac has multiple. Arabic just has one common famous ligature, and that is la, which is lam, l, and alif. And basically, you see here, it just kind of squiggles around like that. Nabatean Aramaic doesn't have that, but Syriac does. You can see how it kind of squiggles around right there. So that's why this leads me to my and I started thinking, like, what happened in the 4th century that brought Syriac to Arabia? Well, like I said, Syriac was heavily associated with Christianity. So Christianity came to Arabia in the 4th century. So it kind of adds up here, you know. It reached Nabatean Kingdom around 350, maybe a little earlier. Some will say 3rd century, late 3rd century. And this leads to my conclusions. Could Syriac have catalyzed the formation of Arabic from Nabatean Aramaic in the 4th century? And the evidence for this is the arrival of Christianity in a similar time period, as well as the inscriptions that we saw. So as I said, in that time period, we did see Syriac influences. But I put a question mark right here because this is just a theory. I've seen very few academic papers for this, which is why I don't want to make any false claims. I'm just showing some parallels that could have catalyzed the formation of Arabic. And that is all. Special thanks to Peggy and Anna Lister, as well as Dr. Kuiper and Gazan for sponsoring this internship. Thank you guys.
All right, well, we have some time for questions. At least I would say it gives at least 20 minutes to Sarah.
Question to Ali. Do you think that the evolution of Arabic had stopped with the rise of Islam as a terms of preservation for it?
So basically, when Islam came around, the Quran was a major, like the height of Arabic literature and writing. So basically, they preserved Arabic in its one form, because that's the thing about the Quran. Over the past 1,500 years, it has not changed. So they did that by preserving the Arabic script. There were different additions, such as the shapes of letters and all that, but everything pretty much stayed the same. So it was definitely preserved, and with the rise of Islam. Catherine.
I just had a curious question for you. Did you find, in your research, did you find any, combination of languages? Like, a book being written in one language and the margins in another? Or, a sort of combination of, Syriac and, Arabic?
Yeah, so I didn't see Syriac and Arabic. It was mostly Arabic texts and then Persian in the margin, in the margins. So that was a majority, because also Arabic was a language of the text, scientific texts and all that. But not all the students, their native languages weren't Arabic. So they learned Arabic in school, but then they'd write their notes in Persian or in, I think I also saw Urdu too. I wasn't too sure though.
So,
I have a question for you too. Just to clarify, so Syriac, is it more of just a liturgical or a written language, or is it actually, or was actually spoken?
Yeah, so Syriac was spoken. Now it's a liturgical language. It has actually evolved, or not evolved, it's ascended into the Eastern Aramaic languages, such as, I think one of them is Turulio, and there's some others, which I'm not really too familiar with. But it definitely did. It's kind of like Latin and the dialects of Latin over the 1,500 years. So.